Hi there, TaffyRue here, and welcome to another exciting episode of Features by TaffyRue, where we get to put the spotlight on young artists, creatives, and entrepreneurs who are bubbling under. And if we're not talking to the rising stars themselves, we are learning from people who have gone before them so we can empower the next generation. Before we dive into today's episode, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So as you know by now, I get to meet amazing, talented individuals through the Bring It On platform. And that is where I met my next guest, Alessandro, an incredible spoken word artist who came through I think 2024, but then he had teamed up with another spoken word artist called I Eat Lemons. He came through to Bring It On 2025, but he came back solo and he was hungry, and he came back and he took the top spot in the Bring It On 2025 spoken word category. He's had so many opportunities and platforms since I got to know him, but I know that it's only the beginning of his gift opening doors for him. I'm super excited to be sitting with Alessandro today. Welcome.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful introduction.
Thank
Wow.
you. I practiced.
I like it.
Yeah. So I know a little bit about you, Alessandro. Maybe you
Yeah.
can start by telling us who you are for those people who are meeting you for the first time.
All right. So my government name is Alessandro Munyaradzi Rambanapasi. Alessandro, there's no X, please.
Alessandro. No.
Yeah. So
Yes.
my stage name is Hartley. I am a spoken word artist. I'm a poet. I'm also a radio presenter. I'm also I'm like a part-time photographer for church, really, because they don't have
Okay.
anyone to pay, so I'm there.
Yeah.
But what else do I do? I'm also a student. Yeah, computer science,
Okay.
a lot of math.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
What else do I do? I'm a brother. I'm a son.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So you are definitely a lot of things, right? So let's start with spoken word. How long have you been doing spoken word?
I've never had time to like calculate. Let me see. My first spoken word performance was in 2016,
Okay.
but I didn't start like properly writing until I think 2019.
Okay.
So let's just say writing from 2019 and then performing like consistently maybe around 2022,
Okay.
2022, 23 thereabout.
Interesting. What
Yeah.
drew you to spoken word and writing?
So first time I performed, 2016. I'd been doing some public speaking before, and my sister used to help me a lot with the writing. In fact, she still does. But yeah, we can keep it a secret.
Yeah.
So she would help me with my writing, speeches and the sort. And one time she brings home this 3-page long piece of like spoken word poetry by Donovan Livingston.
Okay.
He had presented it to like I think Harvard's graduating class of like 2016. So it was like it was an exciting kind of experience. So she comes home and she says, "This is your next piece. This is what you're performing next." And because I had trusted her enough to help me with my writing before, I was like, you know what, this should be fun. And that was the first time that I did it. And I remember watching his video because I wanted to understand what he meant by that piece. It's called Lift Off. And I remember thinking to myself, this is so exciting because it was different. I had been used to like public speaking and speeches.
Yeah.
And there you have to go, oh, protocol observed, and you know, this and that. It's a lot more technical and formal like that. But spoken word was exciting. It was different. It didn't feel like it had any rules and that sort of thing. And that's when I first thought, you know what, this could be fun. This could be an interesting avenue of expressing myself. And then eventually, when I started writing, I had been forced into a corner by one of my teachers. Yeah, she actually came to me mid-exam. I think I was writing like geography or I think combined science. I was in Form 2. Comes in and says, I've been looking for you for weeks and I know you've been avoiding me. I was. But you're going to write this poem and I'm going to submit it because if I don't, we're both in trouble. So I wrote my first poem then, my first original poem then. And it was quite an experience because I ended up winning the competition and I realized, wait a minute, this could be it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you know, after that, it was just poem after poem. And you know, I don't remember stopping after that. Yeah.
Did you ever see yourself, like before you started in 2016, doing probably the spoken word, did you ever see yourself being a public speaker or doing spoken word in that way?
No.
What did you always want to be when we were growing up?
I have had a lot of dreams. I remember at some point I wanted to be a pilot. Some point I wanted to be a chartered accountant. That was before I realized accounts was math, a lot of math and numbers.
But now you're doing maths and through computer science.
I wanted to do computer science before I realized there was a lot of math as well. But now I can't really turn back. So it's like, you know what? I'll suck it up.
Yeah.
I think at that time I wanted to do mechanical engineering. So it was robotics, cars, machines. I didn't think, I'll be speaking in front of people a lot.
Yeah.
But again, big shout out to like my grade 7 teacher. She literally shoved me into that space because she walked in one time and she was like, I need 4 people going to speak at these, I think, merit awards. And then she was like, ini, mini, mini, mu. And that was it.
And that
the
was
4
it.
of us were just pushed into that space.
Yeah.
And I think it was like a very important experience in my life because you need those experiences to show you that you're capable of certain things. I didn't know that I could speak until I didn't have an option because I was scared of her. I was very scared of her. So it was one of those experiences. And you end up seeing, I can actually do it.
Yeah. Shout out to those teachers who always challenge us beyond what we are comfortable with, right? Because for me, when I started singing, it's when I was given a solo back in primary school, and I was like, okay, I think I can actually do this. And that's after then I was now like, okay, I think I can sing and I should pursue this. So shout out to those teachers who actually give us those first opportunities, those glimpses of light into what we can be.
Exactly.
All right. Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned that you are a student and you were studying computer science. How has that journey been with you? Have you been able to connect the computer science world with the spoken word side of things as well?
I'm working on that. I'm working on that. I don't get a lot of opportunities to speak. You're always probably behind a screen trying to figure something out. But I think I did do some kind of like sales during my gap year. And that was like a lot of talking to people and trying to persuade them. So I think maybe, hopefully, that could be that link, you know, pitching, presentations, that sort of thing.
What about inspiration into your spoken word? Because I know So Profound has this piece on mathematics. I don't know what it's called, but I actually was watching it recently, and he was using all the terminology in mathematics and faith and all of those things, you know, in his spoken word piece. So I was wondering, I mean, could it potentially be somewhere where you could get some sort of inspiration?
I guess so. It's one of those things that will eventually just come naturally. I've seen myself referencing coding or lines of code in some of my work. I've seen myself using some of my lines from poetry in like website designs and the sort. So it's just kind of like borrowing ideas from this side and using them there. And I think that's how I've managed to reconcile the two so far. But I think I've also learned and accepted that I am not limited to being one thing, and I'm not limited to one specific line of like work or careers. So I could be doing data analytics and at night have a poetry show.
Yeah.
And I've made peace with that. And I understand that it doesn't have to look like poetry in computer science or computer science and poetry.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just you realizing that there's so many complex sides to you and just embracing them fully like that.
Yeah. I guess that's kind of like also our secret weapon against AI as well. You know, the
Yes.
fact that you can be more than one thing, and the fact that you can borrow some of the stuff that you have in this world and put it in that world and all of those things, which is
Exactly.
quite something that I've realized. Okay.
Yeah.
So at school, I know you've had the opportunity now to get into radio presenting, right? So
Yes.
what has that been like? How did you get behind the mic doing radio stuff?
So as I mentioned before, I like talking a lot. So I think any opportunity I get, I'm yapping.
Yeah.
So one of my seniors in high school, Hamilton, I remember during my gap year, I remember seeing him post something, and he was in the studio, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, he's doing radio now. So I asked him, and then he was like, oh, this is just like a campus radio station. This is what we do. Once you get here, you can come and check it out. And I think I kind of forgot about it. And then I get to school, first semester. So I remember, I think a month and a half into the semester, they sent out an advert. They're like, oh, we're looking for new presenters. And I remember thinking, I've always wanted to do radio. This is it. But I remember holding out for a while.
Okay.
Because I was supposed to send like a minute long kind of like sample of how I would sound on radio. And I remember thinking, what do I say? I don't even know. And I was panicking. And that kind of just like clogged my brain, and I couldn't do a single thing. And then the morning, I think the deadline was like 11:30 a.m. or something. And I remember in the morning, I was like, you know what? I might as well.
Yeah.
What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
So I sent in the recording, and they called me in for an interview, and it was like so much fun.
Yeah.
And then before I knew it, I had my own 3 to 6 segment, and I was
Wow.
doing like traffic beats and interviewing young, artists as well on campus. And it was like, it's been so much fun.
Amazing. And how has, or would you say that your spoken word side, has it helped in any way in radio presenting?
Yeah. I think now I like more. I'm more comfortable doing things on the spot, impromptu
Okay.
type. Yeah, because I had been so used to like preparing and practicing. But with radio, you get to realize that there's always, I'm sure you've noticed in interviewing other people, that
Yeah.
there's always a string that you can, pull on
Yeah.
from that conversation, and, unexpectedly lead to like so many different things. So I think that has also helped. And obviously, because I was kind of used to speaking, it wasn't like an entirely new experience. So I think that just kind of like helped me to like find footing in that. But yeah,
Okay. You've been enjoying it so far.
it's been so much fun.
So what kind of things do you do? Just a quick one before we move on. into radio. Yeah.
So some of the segments I've covered while doing radio were, we had this segment that we called The Next on Pachacoma FM. It's for artists, up-and-coming artists. So we interview them, and we get to talk. I'm basically you in that.
On radio. Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
We also do like traffic beats, so it's mostly just music and weather and traffic updates. We do. There was a segment that I loved. It was called what did we call it? I'm forgetting, but it was kind of like a cyber awareness kind of thing, where we had like tech students coming in saying, oh, don't share your passwords, don't just click everything that you see online,
Yeah.
you don't win money online, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's just those kinds of things. So the idea is to the mantra, so to speak, is to educate, inform, and entertain. So it's mostly just educational shows, entertainment, and those kind of interactions. And we also have like a birthday thing, which I'm very upset because none of my friends have wished me happy birthday on radio.
On radio. Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll get to that one day.
Yeah. Would you do it past school?
Yes.
Like continue radio?
Yes.
Okay.
I wouldn't be asked twice. Yeah,
You jump at the
I would
opportunity.
jump at it.
Yeah.
No questions asked.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. So back to like the spoken word aspect of it, right?
Yeah.
What kind of like pieces, what are your pieces about?
Offset Wayne called me a lover boy. The sad truth.
Yeah.
I love love. I love talking about love and the things that are around love, and it's not limited to romantic love. So it's love of self, love of other people, love of family, love of God, and I'm hoping to pursue a little bit more of that this year. And talk more about my faith. So it's just, I think that's one of the biggest parts of our lives as humans. It's love, and even if it's just like you appreciating like a piece of art, or you appreciating the way your friend makes you feel, or the way certain experiences have shaped you, I think that's the foundation of human existence. It's love, and there's so much to speak about in terms of love, and I think that's like my main focus in terms of like writing and speaking.
Okay. If you had said it was just love, specifically romantic love, my next question was going to be: have you been in relationships to have experienced this kind of love? Huh?
You'd be surprised.
At your young age, huh?
We've loved people.
You've loved people. No, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I mean, God is love at the end of the day, right? And so when you are talking about love, yes, there is romantic love, there's love between brothers and sisters, family love and all of those things. Like, we are created to be in community, and love is a very big part of it. And I think, it's also good to have someone of faith speaking about love, because a lot of the times when people are talking about love and they don't know the source of love, then it means that love will be perverted in some way. So if you are a person of faith speaking about love, even romantic love, like for me, when I got into the music business, I was like, I want to do Christian love songs. So there's nothing wrong with that, because I think as Christians, we need to be talking about the real kind of love that we do have, that emanates from the source of the love, which is God. Okay. Interesting. Before we move on, I know you had a piece that you did at Bring It On 2025, your winning piece, right? What inspired that piece? I thought it was really profound, and it was really speaking into some of the issues that men are facing in today's society. Can you speak into your piece? What inspired it? What made you want to do that piece?
Yeah. So last year was the year that I started using the name Hartley, and I was kind of like coming to terms with the fact that I read about love and it's okay. Because at first I was like, no. But then I was like, you know what? This is it. And I was exploring so many parts of that love, and I realized that my life has been shaped in so many ways by the friends that I have, the brothers that I've made along the way, and I hold them so dearly in my heart, and they mean so much to me. So these are the friends that I went to school with. These are some of the guys that mentored me. These are some of the older guys that I still talk to all day, every day.
Yeah.
So they're like a huge part of my life. And then I realized that they have carried me in so many ways. I've got two brothers, Israel and Theophilus. Very, very headaches, I tell you. But I love them with all I have. And I realized that even though I didn't have an older brother growing up, I still found older brothers in every space that I went into. So that kind of like realization made me realize that they have been there for me so much, and I want other people to have that as well. So if the pieces about brotherly love and how you can be there for the next person, and how it's very important that you remind your friends, your brothers, of how much you love them and how much you care about them, so that they realize that half of the battles that they're going through, they don't have to face them alone, and you're always there with them. And it's one of those things, because I realized that men cringe a lot at saying I love you to one another. It's sad, really. It's sad, but it's there, and it's important, I think, to have people remind you that they care about you, and that they they worry about you and that they're looking out for you and they want the best for you. So I think that's the foundation of that piece. It's just me expressing my love for my brothers, and just saying I appreciate you, and if you need me, I'm there for you.
What issues do you think young men are facing these days?
So the big problem is there's lack of room, so to speak, in terms of expressing how we feel and what we're going through. And I've noticed this in so many ways. You grow up and you hurt a toe and people say, I'm coming at you, boys don't cry, men don't cry. And you grow up with that and you cement that thought. So even if it's things that you really, really need to cry to get over, you find yourself not crying about them. You don't talk about them. You joke about the things that are hurting you deeply. You will find some of my friends heartbroken as in the worst possible state, and they're joking about it. Why? And you realize that this is just deflecting. And I feel like that is one of the biggest problems that we have. So I feel like we need to create more spaces for men to just realize that they're human and that they can crumble down and they can get tired. And it's only in realizing that and accepting that we can help each other, get back up. And we can, help and play a part in each other's healing, and that sort of thing. So I think that in kind of like toxic masculinity, into that this men must do this, I feel like it's eating away at our peace, and I just hope that that particular piece can probably bring awareness to that.
I didn't prepare for this question, but just in line with what you're talking about, do you think that the rise of like feminism is causing some of the struggles that men are facing these days?
That's you could get me cancelled on the internet for this. So there was a time in my life when I used to say I'm a feminist, and being raised by a single mom, you get to realize that wow, women are like so amazing and they are capable of so many great things. And I acknowledge that, and I understand the basis of equality and people wanting equal opportunities and the sort. I do feel like there are instances where people misconstrue the idea and take it out of context. What used to look like women fighting for equality now sometimes often feels like women fighting for superiority. And I can understand that, because historically the idea has been, women have been suppressed, and I can understand why people would want more and more and more of maybe power and that, and I understand. I sympathize and I acknowledge that. I do feel like the biggest concern would be in trying to make sure that we amplify the voices of women and that we give them the space that we owe them and that they deserve. We don't end up taking away from the spaces that we as men still need to be in. Because I get it. It's very important, and it's very important that we find spaces for women in schools and in jobs and in this and that. But there's still space that we need to reserve for men as well. In trying to amplify the voices, can we just not silence the next voice? And that's my main concern with the idea. But I'm all for gender equality and all that. Totally.
Yeah, definitely. For me, as I've been growing older, I've been realizing that, like you're saying, like people have misconstrued that idea to some extent, but also I think men have suffered a lot because of that stance, because probably, it probably might have started from a good place, but then people captured it, and then it ended up actually then silencing the voices of the men and the parts that the men are supposed to take up. And so I feel like a lot of struggle that we are seeing with the young men these days is being caused by the fact that they feel like they don't belong, or they're not supposed to be in that space. And yet, we were created to actually exist in harmony. But now, like you're saying, it's because we're trying to raise the voice of one person, we are silencing the other, and yet we're supposed to be in communion. We're supposed to be in harmony as both men and female. And it's not supposed to be one benefiting more than the other, but having that space where we are all equal in terms of value. But the roles that we are supposed to take under, our beliefs as Christians, we are supposed to take those roles, and they're God-given roles, and there's a reason why God gave women certain roles, God gave men certain roles, and in all that, I think it's just become a muddy water. It has. But for me, my heart goes out to the young men growing up in this day and age, because it's tough. It's tough. I won't lie to you. It really is tough. And a dream of mine or a hope of mine is that probably like with the spoken word pieces, like especially the one that you did last year, it really gave a voice to what young men are going through now, and it encouraged, like you were saying, fellow brothers to come together and really support each other, because I think that's something that maybe men struggle with, that support structure, being there for each other, and like you're saying, actually acknowledging the love that you have for each other, because it can be misconstrued, and all of that. So I think that's one thing that I think spoken word is powerful is that it can start conversations. What else do you think spoken word can do in today's society?
Yeah. So like you said, I think one of the biggest steps in like realizing or addressing situations and issues is starting the conversation. I think it's very important that we talk about certain things. I remember, I think I wrote something the other day. I think the title was, I wish you talked about the things that matter. And the idea is, there are certain things that we just need to stop talking about, whether we want to or we don't, the uncomfortable conversations. And I find spoken word as a very good outlet for me to start those particular, conversations. And apart from starting that conversation, I realized that awareness might seem so small and, so minor, but I feel like it's such a big step in addressing situations, because there's going to come a time when someone doesn't realize that what they're doing is wrong, or they don't realize what exactly they're going through, or that other people are going through the same thing. But when you talk about it and, we can find community in that, people realize, oh, so this is how this situation is going on, or this is happening in a certain part of the country that I didn't know about, situations that you have no idea were going on. And, and in spoken word, we tell the stories and we share those, parts of our lives that the rest of the world ought to know about. And, so it starts as me talking about manhood and toxic masculinity at the stage and bring it on. And then you go and talk to, a friend of yours about it, and I go and do the same. And before we know it, everyone is talking about, creating space for men to be able to do those kind of things. So I think, it's an awareness kind of issue and starting the conversation. So I think that's how spoken word can play a part in that.
Definitely. What other issues do you think the young generation is facing?
I think we have started to incentivize the wrong things. I think people become popular for all the wrong reasons nowadays. And because of our innate desire to belong, to be part of something, we end up trying to do those exact same things when they don't align with our values, when they don't align with our beliefs. And it eats away at your character, at who you are as an individual, at your uniqueness as a person. And that's the biggest problem. You go on the internet and people are doing the exact same thing, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, but sometimes what we're copying isn't exactly the right thing. What you're copying doesn't exactly align with who you are as an individual or your values. In fact, it goes in the exact opposite direction of who you want to be. And I feel like because we try so much to fit in and to belong, that then becomes the problem, because now you're doing everything and you're just trying to fit in, especially with the advent of social media and the way that we're using it so much these days. It's one bad idea spreading to millions in an
Yes.
instant, and millions wanting to do that because it made one person famous
Yeah.
or well known.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem. We're incentivizing all the wrong things, and I feel like if we could shift attention on the media to more positive things, to important things, I feel like that kind of influence could be used in much better and much more beneficial ways. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Because I know when we were growing up, I think when I was still a teenager, which is, now that I calculate, it's a long time ago. But, being a teen was hard enough without social media. And if somebody wanted to do something like crazy, it wouldn't get to the next school, But now because of social media, when somebody does something and, everybody's talking about it, everyone wants to try that thing. Because now there's just a lot of, I guess the internet has made the world smaller in a way. And so, one not so great thing can actually get multiplied and end up being a terrible thing. So, yeah, social media has definitely done a number, I think, on young people, but even on everybody, actually,
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I think, like, with what you're doing in terms of starting conversations through your pieces, probably that could actually help solve some of the issues when somebody listens to your piece, like you're saying, or somebody talks about your piece, they're able to impact the next person and see that they're not alone in the world and see the era of some of the ways that they would have gone on and stuff.
Exactly.
I saw on the internet, speaking of the internet, you posted a video of you were in the middle of a performance. And I don't know if the call was an accident, a fake call, or it was on purpose. Can you explain what happened? Because I'm sure I'm not the only one who's like, did this person actually get a call mid-performance?
Okay. So, I think I'm just going to have to invite the person who called me so that they can confirm and verify that it was an actual
it was
call.
actually true.
Okay, so I remember I can't remember the date. But I was performing at Nyasham Nashi's EP listening party. And we had been at a concert, like a worship concert type of a thing with my friend. So we're there, but I had a show that was starting at 6. I think my slot was 6:30, but I had to be at the venue by like 5:30 to do sound check. So we were at the show for a little while, and then I had to leave early because I had to go and do my sound check. So I leave, I do the sound check, I'm done, and then my friend is like, oh, when you're done with the sound check, please let me know what slot they give you so that I know what time to get there.
Yeah.
I text him, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna start at 6:30. He's still at the show. And then proceeds to come to the venue very, very late. So he starts to call, I think, a few minutes before my performance. So he's calling, and I'm hanging up because already nerves.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get myself into the headspace of performing.
Yes.
So I think to myself, well, do I put my phone in airplane mode? But I can't because he's walking and he's, looking for directions and stuff.
Yeah.
So I get on stage and he's still calling. And I think to myself, I might as well just tell him that I'm performing now so that he stops, because he had been calling relentlessly.
Yeah.
So I picked the call, and thank God the audience was friendly.
Yes.
Oh my days.
I can't even imagine.
I was praying that I hope this doesn't go wrong. So I pick up the call and I'm like, oh, I'm performing now. And everyone, lucky enough, everyone had like a good laugh about it.
Yeah.
I had people coming to me after the show saying, whatever that was, whether it was fake or whether it was a genuine moment, we liked it.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, fine. At least it worked out. But people actually think it was a fake call. I think I have a picture that actually shows like part of the screen of my phone that it was actually a call.
Yeah.
And it's I'll actually have I'll have him do like an entire, short video saying, "Oh,
He
I'm the one who
should.
called them."
Yes,
and explain
yes,
to
and
people.
verify because the trauma V11.
Because we were like, no, we think you were faking
Yeah.
it. But yeah, it was one of those you had to be there moments.
I know.
And I'm
I
so
know.
happy it's on video.
Yeah.
It's a good laugh.
I think it will go down in the books. I don't think it happens a lot.
It does.
Do you have any other moments like that ever happened? Like, things that.
Well, that was most definitely the funniest.
Uh-huh.
That was most definitely the
Well,
funniest.
it was definitely funny after the fact.
After the fact, in the moment, I was so nervous. I was so scared.
Yeah.
What are the moments? I don't think I've had any other like big moments on stage. I have had Lemons hit me harder than we practiced for our for our duo poem.
Yes.
In that whole Cain and Abel piece,
Uh-huh.
where Cain was supposed to strike Abel at the end of the piece.
Yes.
He hit me a lot harder than we agreed
Then
on.
you agreed on.
And we had a conversation after that piece. I was like,
Kaufa. Because you're actually trying to kill me on stage.
What is that? So yeah, I think those would probably be my top two comedic moments on stage.
Yeah. I mean, things can happen when you're on stage, and things go on that are unplanned and stuff. So it's quite interesting when you then are narrating the stories afterwards and you're like, I cannot believe that actually happened, right? Yeah. Okay. But like, how would you bounce back from something if, when things like that, when something unplanned happens, how would you, give advice to someone? How do you bounce back after?
So I've realized and I've internalized the fact that when I do poetry, I'm enjoying myself. It's fun. I'm at home and I'm just trying to relax and to have fun.
Yeah.
So that's the goal. The main goal is to have fun. And once you realize that, I think it takes off some of the pressure. And, especially in competitions, you're like, I need to win. But then you remember, but I'm also doing this because I love it.
Yeah.
So that kind of like calms you down.
Okay.
I've also begun to, I'm not very funny, sadly, but I've also begun to try and, open up with a little joke so that when people laugh, and I laugh, I feel,
yeah,
we're all the same anyway. It kind of like relaxes the atmosphere around, and whether it's a good or a bad joke, people laugh either way. Sometimes because it's a bad joke, and I'm like, you know what? I'll take the win.
I know
anyway.
that's a bad joke, but I'll take
it. So after that, it just kind of like calms down, and from then on, whatever piece I'm performing, it's more like a conversation with the people, and I don't feel the whole I'm performing kind of a setup. I think the same thing happened. There was a show that you came to, I think it was The Perfect Love Letter, last year in February. And I remember thinking, oh my days, I don't have a stage name. And I remember going there and saying, you can call me nervous because today I feel a little nervous. And that calmed me down.
Yeah.
And after that, it was just that you open with a small kind of like a joke and you try to calm yourself down.
Yeah.
And, make the audience realize that you're not any different. It's just conversation.
Yeah, we're all humans here. Yeah.
So that's how I bounce back.
Okay.
To realize that you're just having fun and you're just talking to people. Yeah.
All right. I think I'll try that. I'll try that.
Yeah.
When I'm singing, because the nerves can get the best of you. They can really get the best of you. All right.
You have nerves.
Me? You have no idea. You have no idea. And like if people were to get into my brain before I perform, and they were to see like the way my heart will be racing, I think I need to wear some of those one of those smart watches and we can record like my heart rate before, like moments before I hit the stage. Even when I'm on stage, I guess maybe because I'm a perfectionist, I do struggle with trying to make things perfect, and then in that just makes it just puts a lot of pressure on you. But like those strategies that you talked about remembering why you're doing it in the first place, and that you are singing in front of humans who just want
Exactly.
to hear the gift God gave you.
Exactly.
And so I think that could really take a lot of the pressure off. So yeah, I'm definitely going to try out some of those tips there.
Try the jokes.
Jokes. I'm not too sure about that. Where do you see yourself like 5 years from now or 10 years from now, especially when it comes to the whole speaking and the whole spoken word world of your life?
So I came across a list that I wrote sometime in 2021, I think. I was in the lower six. Yo, I'm old.
Please, you think you're old? Lower six, 2021. That's only what, 4 years ago?
5, actually.
4, technically.
Fair enough.
Right?
Fair enough.
So
Fair
you're
enough.
saying at lower six, at 4 years, that's quite young, my friend. If you're old, then what am I? I'm a dinosaur.
I'm not old. Don't worry. Still young.
Anyway, you're saying.
So I came across that list and I wrote down some of the things that I wanted to achieve. And at the time, I was like, I want to do this by end of 2022. Some of the things on that list took me about 3-4 years to accomplish. And that's when I realized sometimes the goal is to just end up achieving what you want to achieve and to not give yourself specific timelines. It's important to set specific goals, but sometimes it's also important to give yourself grace and realize that certain things will only be achievable at a certain time. So I'm not going to say 5 or 10 years from now, but I do want to, because I do a lot of public speaking and debate, I want to have a kind of like academy of my own where I'm coaching young students on how to speak and how to write.
Okay.
I think that's very, very important for me. I've been doing it in some of the schools that I learned, and it's a big part of my life. So that's one. I also wouldn't mind a nama, or at least a nama nomination.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that I've realized I want lately. I didn't think I wanted it before, but I think I would like it. I think I would like it. Yeah. I also wouldn't mind maybe publishing like a collection of poems because I'm losing some of them and I want them. So I think it would be nice to have like a piece that just holds some of
Everything
those
together.
memories together. Yeah. So yeah, maybe like a book, and and definitely an academy. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
I like what you said in terms of earlier before your list now, in terms of how you're saying that you realize that it took you a number of years to achieve certain goals. I guess what I just wanted to add to that is that you might not achieve something when you have set it, because probably it's just not God's time for that to happen yet. And so it can take a bit of time, and something that you would have wanted to achieve in a year can take place 10 years later, but it doesn't make it any less of an achievement because
Exactly.
you've arrived late to it according to your standards. So I think that is a profound thing to be able to be your age and know that, because I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves on the goals that we want to achieve, and we want to be a millionaire by the time I'm 25, but then it doesn't happen. And now you want to give up on yourself because you haven't achieved it, but maybe it's just not the time yet, and the time is coming. So it's very good that you know that at this age, because a lot of things will come that will delay certain things, but it doesn't mean it's denial. Okay. All right. So now we've come to the part of the podcast where the interviewer becomes the interviewee, and you get to ask me a few questions.
I've been waiting for this.
So go ahead.
Right.
Fire away.
Right. So, when did you start singing?
Quick side note before we continue. I think a lot of these people who are coming to this podcast have not watched the previous season. So if you're one of them who is going to be invited to this podcast, please make sure you watch the other episodes, because I think I've answered this so many times. But I'll answer it again. I started singing when I was young. I got my first solo when I was 10. So I guess that's where you could say I started singing solo then. Yeah, that's when I started. When I was 10 years old, when I got my first solo. That's when I was like, I want to do the music thing afterwards, yeah.
So between then and now, what's probably like the biggest or most valuable lesson that you've learned in doing that?
Now that's a deep question. I haven't really coined that yet because I've definitely learned a lot of lessons since then. I would say the number one lesson that I learned from then until now, it doesn't always happen the way you want it to happen. And it doesn't always happen when you want it to happen. Because back then I had a plan. Like I remember I was like, I had planned out how I was going to raise the money for me to get into studio. And I was like, I'm going to record before I'm 14 years old. And, I had planned it like I'm a planner. So from that age, I was already planning how it was going to happen. It did not happen like that. Nowhere near what I had in my head. So I think that's the lesson that I have learned the most. Yeah, it doesn't always look the way you want it to, and it won't happen when you want it to, but all in God's time.
And it's still very valuable when it does happen.
Still very valuable when it does happen. I think if some of the things that happened to me, that have happened to me like later on in life happened before, I probably wouldn't have been in the right headspace to appreciate, to appreciate the gift it is. Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah.
That is so true. Anyway, one very important question is, if I invite you to radio, will you come?
And then I show up for my Bring It On people.
Okay.
I know I'm watching. A lot of people are afraid to ask.
Okay.
Hansi, those who ask shall receive.
But I don't prep people on interviews. I like impromptu stuff.
One thing that I've learned from Features by TaffyRue is like when I get to this segment that asks TaffyRue anything, it really has given me practice in answering things impromptu. I would like to say I would be okay.
Okay. Lovely. So next up I'm going to write a beautiful intro for you, like the one that you wrote for me. I'm going to spend months preparing that. Yeah. And then we'll definitely have you.
It'll be a pleasure to be in your office for a bit. Yeah.
I'll bring back the other book of questions
on the next time. All right. Oh, cool. Yeah. All right. So I know that you have a wealth of knowledge or wisdom or experience that you've had over you said you started when? 2019? And this is 2026? Yes. I was about to say 2025. Clearly, I'm still behind. Over the 5, 6, 7 years that you've been doing this, right? Maybe you could look into the camera and give a word of advice. This one. Word of advice. Anything that you have learned, that you have applied to your life in spoken word, in general, anything. Give a word of advice to those guys who are probably following behind you or even your peers.
All right. This camera? All right. Advice? An old person when you say advice. Okay. I think the biggest thing I've learned and that you could probably use is just do it. Do it wrong. Do it when you're not ready. Do it imperfect. Do it when you're scared. Do it when you're doubting. Just go for it, because majority of the time when we wait for everything to just align, we end up abandoning the things that we're supposed to be doing, and that's not fair. That's not fair on you. That's not fair on the person that's supposed to be reading your poem or hearing your song. Just go for it, and remain as authentic to yourself as you possibly could be, because no one out there is like you, and that's your greatest trademark. That's your greatest selling point, and that's always going to be one of the biggest things that you value later on. So yeah, that's a lot of advice.
It's an amazing piece of advice, actually. Yeah, that's amazing.